very good evening to you. Welcome to the West Ham Weekly on the West Ham Voice on a Monday night. Thank you all for joining me. I wish it was under better circumstances. I mean, the euphoria of what happened last Thursday in the game against Spurs, we were soon knocked back down to earth, weren't we, on Sunday when we went to visit Fulham. We've had three London Derbies, of which we've drawn one, won one, and lost one. A bit of a difference, isn't there? I mean, the game against Crystal Palace the week before on Sunday, was one of those games where it wasn't a great performance. We kind of picked it up in the second half. Did we, we maybe deserved more? I don't know. We didn't play that well overall. And then we went off to Spurs on Thursday night, and the first half performance was pretty poor. And we honestly thought we were going to get a spanking. And we were really surprised that at 1-0 down at half time, we were still in the game. And then up pops the second half, and we get an absolutely superb win, absolutely deserved as well in the way we performed, in our approach, etc. Complete different contrast to the first half. And then, of course, on Sunday, we go off to Fulham in West London, little old Fulham, and we get tonked, absolutely tonked. Now, there are reasons given for it. I'm going to go into that later on. But also, apparently, I don't know if he'll come on, but apparently I've got a special guest coming on to give us three exclusives. So we'll wait for that. But in the meantime, let's say hello to everyone in the chat and catch up with that. We'll scroll, as I always do, all the way to the top. Good evening, Montana. I hope you're well. Personally, I said he can stay until the end of the contract, David Moyes. But to be honest, there are very good coaches out there. Rob Edwards is doing a great job against the fraud six with the squad that he has. Montana again. Look at Everton. Who could have guessed that Sean Dyche can make them look so good? But it all starts with his belief in team and achievements. I can only imagine what he tells them in the dressing room. It's really interesting. Sean Dyche was one of the managers in the past that we were linked to. And not just about, an awful lot of West Ham fans turned around and said, absolutely no way, no thank you. And look now. Good evening to you, Anthony. I hope you're well. We won a European trophy. We've been in Europe 3 years running. We're sitting ninth in the table. So what's the problem? We had a bad day at the office. And you could look at it that way. I guess I don't think you're wrong, to be honest with you. Will David Moyes be sacked, all things considered? No, I don't think he will be, to be quite frank. I think the board will stick with him until the end of the season or the latter half of this season, and then make a decision. So you're right, in a way. It's not anywhere near as bad as it was last season when we were fighting relegation. Anthony, again, let's see how we get on Thursday. It's a must-win game. Then on Sunday, we play Wolves at home. Both we want to win both, and you'll forget about the bad day at the office. And you know what? That is true. Good evening, Miss Smith. How are you? 3 points off 6. Tragic. It's Groundhog Day on these fan channels. So desperate are they to churn the dumb tabloid reactionary pot. Anyone can see how knackered we were on Sunday. I'm not advocating Moyes out. I think if you watch my channel on a regular basis, you'd know otherwise. And we will talk about the game a little bit later on, or both games a little bit later on. And what will happen to David Moyes? And what is it that David Sullivan has said that's put the cat amongst the pigeons with regards to the next 2 games are crucial, or whatever it was he said. Steve, good evening to you. All okay yesterday's result. Good evening, Stelton and all. Yesterday's result was bad, but Moyes staying. We can't overtake teams like Villa. They were behind us last season, and Moyes has spent more money than Emery. Yeah, I think it was a silly statement to make, and I kind of alluded to that last week. He said we cannot match Villa's resource. How much has Moyes spent in the last 3 years? Well, interestingly, Kent Hammer asked me earlier today, do I know what the net spend has been since David Moyes' return to West Ham his second time round? And I thought it's interesting because I did a show a couple of months back when I talked about we spent over £400 million and David Moyes is still talking about trying to build a squad. And I thought, it's a little bit, what's going on there? Why don't we have the squad that he wanted? And I think David Moyes said it's going to take something like 3 or 4 or 5 transfer windows in order for him to have the squad that he needs. He's had that now. And he's had, interestingly, he's spent about 480 million and we've sold around about 250 million. So roughly speaking, net spend has been about 230 million pounds in his time here. But, you know, we have let a lot of players go for very little. And I think our big, of that 250 odd million pounds that we've recruited, a lot of it, of course, was one player, which was Declan Rice, wasn't it? Obsidian, good evening to you. It's Christmas, mate, not Halloween. More Moyes and Yank investment. That's terrifying. Well, hopefully when the guest comes on, if he comes on, might tell us a bit more about the investment. Steve, Miss Smith, knackered we might be, but yet Moyes plays Creswell and Fornals on the left. Was doomed to failure. Give Cornet a chance. Don't know what's happening with Cornet. I must admit, I am very, very baffled over the whole Cornet saga. Because I've been saying for quite a lot of this season, you know, why not give the lad a try, an opportunity to see what he's capable of? He came on in the game against TSC, provided the winner, the cross that got us the winning goal, and then he's gone again. Usual. Good evening to you. I hope you're well, mates. David, good evening, mate. Thank you for joining. Good evening to you, old man. I hope you're well. Sweet Pon, how many minutes late? Oh, by the way, I've got to thank, I won't mention his name in case he doesn't want me to, but someone made an extremely generous donation on PayPal to me last week. And I'm really, I never ask for it. I never advocate it, but I'm really grateful for it because now I've got a little bit more cash in order to buy that equipment I need in order to do phone-ins. Still a way to go, but I am so grateful. And thank you to that individual. And if you want me to, he's on. So if you want me to say your name, please do say I can. Steve, give him Betty. Oh, we won't talk about Betty. She's having a little nap. Kent, good evening to you, mate. I hope you're well. Most inept performance since Reading in 2007. For me, too slow, too predictable, too easy to beat yesterday. And my guest is in the background, so I will come to him in a minute. Yesterday showed Alvarez needs to be covered in January. The only good thing yesterday were the fans. Yeah, it sang until the end. I mean, it's all what you could do, really. Barry, good evening to you. Anyone who says what's the problem is Moyes. Old man, why can't Kehrer sit in the front of the back four? He's not bad distribution. It's interesting because I think people seem to... I think the assumption is that Moyes has made his mind up about certain players. And Cornet seems to be in that list. And it looks like Kehrer as well. And, you know, you may include others. You know, whether you think they're worthy of being in the first team or not is another matter. But players like Connor Coventry covering, as an example, for Alvarez when he's off, when he's injured, etc. So it's interesting. Maybe I'll ask the guest that's come on what he thinks about Moyes' favourites. Adam, all right, still, hope everyone is okay. All good, mate. Thank you for joining. Not going to rant, shit performance, and it's on Moyes. Need to get back to basics and sort the defence out. It's been poor all year. I don't disagree with that. For someone who's a defensive-minded manager, we're conceding an awful lot of goals. Flemmer, hi, Stel, and my hammers. Lost for words, to be fair. The only way is Moyes out. Good evening to you, DA. I hope you're well. All the way from New Zealand. It's raining, is it? I bet it's still warm there, DA. I hope you're well. Thanks for joining, mate. Dean, another turbulent day in the life of a Hammers fan. Mixed messages, confusion, and leaks on the back of a humiliating performance. Well, if there's anyone to talk about leaks, it would be the guest that's coming on in a moment. I'll get through the last few comments, and then I'll bring him on. And then once we've had his 3 exclusives, that's what he told me earlier, so he better live up to them. Then we can get on with the rest of the show after that, and we'll do more of your comments. But let's do a few more for now. Foxes, good evening to you. Moyes is a ball sack. I'm guessing you're not a fan. Only at West Ham, old man, can we have a defensive coach who can't defend, has no striker on the pitch, so we can't attack with pace. Good evening to you, Martin. I hope you're well. What can I say about yesterday? Makes for an interesting show tonight. Well, we've seen from the comments already. Shaky, good evening to you, mate. I hope you're well. Foxes, we got Super Dave Noise, and we're still leaking goals. Aaron, good evening to you. I hope you're well. Right, let's bring him on because I know he's a very impatient man. You know, he doesn't stand on ceremony. He's like, I'll come on, and like if I don't come on within the next 30 seconds, I'll probably piss off. So let's bring him on and let's see what exclusive he has. And I will come back to all your comments as well.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
Yeah, I know I'm not wrong. That's why I thought.
I've just finished the podcast, Monday night, mate.
You've done your show. You've done your show, haven't you? Have you finished it already?
Now, when I say exclusives, obviously we did talk about 2 of these on the podcast, so it's a YouTube exclusive.
Okay. Well, no one listens to your podcast, Sean. So
I just put something on Twitter with one of those exclusives to sort of plug the podcast before I come on here. But there's 3, right? Which one do you want to start with? We can either start with the name of the American investor, or the potential American investor, a potential manager replacement who's been approached for the summer. Or we can talk about the latest on the Moyes pressure sack situation. Which one do you want to start with?
Well, they're all quite interesting. So let's get the one that's I think is obviously not going to happen out of the way first, and that's the Moyes sacking.
Yeah, look, I'm just as guilty as everyone else, but senior source talks to Clarence Hugh. 14 words, right? The 14 words, which I sent to you, you know this.
Yeah.
This is after the defeat, right? So everyone's frustrated. Let's put it this way. We consider the next 2 games in capitals very, very important.
So I asked you this question earlier, Sean, and I said, what does that mean?
What did I say to you?
And you said, it doesn't mean anything for now, more or less.
I said it's open to interpretation. I think
it's open to interpretation.
If your Moyes out, you take that he's being pressurized. If he doesn't win the next 2 games, he's sacked. If you're not, you just go, it's a statement of the bloody obvious, right? It's important that we win the game against Freiburg. And after a loss against Fulham, it's important to stay in the top 10. It's one of those statements, those 14 words that people can read a lot into it. And I know some people, we won't mention them, that runs a YouTube channel, have taken it to mean that
he's gone.
It's conspiracy theory. I've even heard people telling me that the situation that if the players will be given 2 days off because it will give a little buffer while they sack him. Complete and utter balderdash. They've been given 2 days off because one, they're sick, but they're fatigued, but mostly because they don't want the virus. They want a natural fire break for the virus.
So how bad? Let's get onto that for a few seconds. How bad is this virus? I mean, it literally has spread across the whole squad, hasn't it?
Well, I mean, you heard David Moyes. In fact, we put it on the end of our podcast. I put the interview, but because he does apologise, right? He apologises. He said, "Look, it's an embarrassing performance and result, and I'm sorry for all the fans." He then goes on to make an excuse, but at the end of it, he says, Fornells and Emerson were sick yesterday, i.e. Saturday. Interesting that Fornells started and Emerson came on. He was said to be sick himself. He didn't leave his seat in the second half. Others may say there was a reason for that. And obviously, Alvarez actually turned up at Craven Cottage and was taken home. It was a very late pullout, feeling sick. So, look, bad day at the office. I think if I was him and in that position, I would just go, I want to apologise. But first exclusive, by the way, just got to let the dog in because he's okay. One thing.
Montana, you asked what his channel is. He runs a channel called, it's a podcast. It's not on YouTube. It's a podcast called More Than Just a Podcast. So Bobby Moore, spelling than just a podcast. I won't lie, it is good, even though Sean's on it.
And Canning Townlend and my good mate, good mate John, who I've been friends with and got him into West Ham at 11 years old. And he gives me a lot of grief.
And also, Sean, plug your Twitter account.
Our Twitter account is, you haven't put it on here, whatever it is, at West Ham Football. And do you know what? Nowadays, I probably break most of my stories on that. You don't have to pay anything. It's completely free. Anyway,
what I'll start doing is he'll start giving me the details and I'll charge you a lot for the details. Go on, Sean. Give us the exclusive.
So the first one is that we were told today, just to clarify, because I think people got the wrong end of the stick, including my good colleague, Huey, who doesn't like Moyes, right? It's no lie, and he said Moyes on thin ice. I think the senior sources moved to clarify the point this afternoon by saying Moyes is not under pressure. Moyes is not under any pressure of the sack. He could lose the next 2 games and there will be no consequence.
So why did Sullivan come out with a statement that he did then?
Who said it was Sullivan? I don't reveal the sources here.
Oh, I'm sorry. Why did the senior source come out with a statement that he did?
I think, like everyone else, he was pissed off on Sunday night. Who wasn't? Who wasn't pissed off after the game?
Well, you disappeared there. You got stuck.
Oh, right. Who wasn't pissed off after the game?
Yeah, I think we all were. Of course we were. Yeah.
And senior source gets frustrated as well. So it is what it is. But that interpretation could be read different ways, and unfortunately, I think it got a bit carried away that it was an ultimatum. I'm in no uncertain terms. I've been told it was not an ultimatum, and maybe the senior source was looking at social media channels and reading the backlash and going, actually, I didn't mean that. I didn't mean that. He's not under any pressure.
He must know what effect any statement's going to have, whether it's
as I say, people moan about this, but he is a fan at the end of the day, and he feels as frustrated as, whoever he may be. If he owns a football club, you would feel a little bit aggrieved, wouldn't you? Agreed. There's a bit more in the game, and I think West Ham TV said this. The official channel. Moyes doesn't lose games in this way. It's very un-Moyes-like. We usually lose, by 1-0. So to lose 5-0 was embarrassing for him. It was embarrassing for the players, and embarrassing for the club. So I think we have to just say it was a throwaway comment.
It was a heat of the moment comment,
which has been clarified. So that's just. You said it at the beginning, right? Not much of an exclusive. He ain't getting sacked, right? Yeah. Even if he loses the game against Freiburg and the game against Wolves, he ain't getting sacked. So.
Okay, we've cleared that up. Let's leave the best till last. So let's deal with the American investment now, because we know Vanessa Gold has inherited some of her late father's shares in West Ham United, and it's no secret. Something like 3-4 weeks ago, just over a month ago, she approached Rothschild to look for an investor.
Yeah, way before that. It was back in the summer. But yeah, you're right.
Oh, Christ. Was it that long ago?
Yeah.
Okay. So you've got a name.
Well, do you know what? Someone sort of... There was a story in one of the news sites about the Qataris again, which I've said has never been serious. And it was one of those stories. The Times ran a story about the Qataris back in... October, which I said was never going to happen because no one has ever approached the club. And there was another story yesterday sort of saying they were looking elsewhere. They'd gone off. Well, they were never looking at West Ham. But anyway, what was said is, but the Americans are. And I went, oh. So I spoke to my source and they said, well, I was given a name. I can't say who by. And he said, well, I approached this name, but they wouldn't talk to me. So, you think, okay. And because of who the person was, they would want a stand-up story by getting some kind of comment. But I don't have that. I don't have to go through that kind of lawyers need to look over things, etc. Standard. And therefore, I was given a name. It sounds plausible. It's only a potential investor, and it was this name was recommended to saying this guy is a potential investor. So I've just been given the name tonight, and I've just been looking him up. But do your own research, right?
I will.
He's an American, born in New York, dropped out of college. His name is, and I hope I'm doing this right, Robert or Bobby Kotick, Kotick, and his fame is he dropped out of college to start a software company at the suggestion of Steve Jobs. Wikipedia is a wonderful thing, and at one point he bought a company, 25% of a company called Activision, which I'm sure you've heard of in the gaming world, and this was in the 90s. Now, if you know your gaming, actually that company was bought by Microsoft last year for 70 billion, right? He didn't own still 25%, but he's a rich guy, right? Forbes say he's worth $870 million. so he's not quite a billionaire, but he's well on his way. He's had a little bit of controversy. I'm not going to say it on this channel, but you can Google it up.
Look at what Epic's just said. Bobby Kotick is an awful human being.
Yeah, so he's had his controversy in the workplace.
Oh God! Why do we attract always the controversy?
But look, he's a potential investor, and my understanding, he's stepping down in January, early 2024, from his CEO role of Activision, and he's potentially looking for an investment for the next thing, what he wants to do.
It doesn't sound, Sean, like if this is going somewhere, it doesn't sound like it's going to be a very popular investment.
Well, what do we know about Trip Smith? Trip Smith's got 8%. I ran a tweet earlier. Yeah, good point. Whoever's just saying that, name a great billionaire. There's a forever more influence of Americans. If we look at it, Manchester United, Arsenal, Spurs, if you count, what's his name, Joe Lewis, sort of American, although he's registered offshore. You've got Burnley, you've got Brighton, you've got Villa, you've got Crystal Palace. Everton looks like they're being taken over by 7-7 partners, and there's dodginess. If West Ham and if the 10%'s bought and that makes it 18%, but there's a more and more influence from the Americans rather than the Middle East, and the concern is at one point if 14 clubs are owned by Americans, then they have control of the Premier League. Right, because you have 14 clubs, and we're getting quite close to that,
But they're not complete control. They have an investment in. But
if you look at them, a lot of them have got majority control. I'm not suggesting West Ham has, but a lot of those. I mean, the Glazers. I mean, that looks like it's going to move, but the Glazers still have majority control, even with Sir Jim Ratcliffe coming in.
Look at the comments coming out. Americanized.
But
VAR
franchise. No relegation or no promotion. I'm being flippant, but you don't know. The Americans see, because the Americans see it all as big data, right? They've seen with their sports that you're not buying in just a club, you're buying data, you're buying customers, and that in the future it's all about big data. But anyway, make of that what you will. I don't know whether he will fulfill. All I know is it's a name being put forward as a potential investor for that 10%, and we'll see if it comes to fruition. The guy is retiring from his CEO role, and maybe he wants to take up a new hobby, and that hobby might be West Ham.
Oh dear,
a little bit like Trip Smith, who sort of retired, and you know what? As someone said earlier, everyone's probably a wrong un if you've made a few enemies when you've made that kind of money.
True.
So we're into exclusive number 2. So we're ready for exclusive number 3, are we?
We are ready for exclusive, the most important one, I would imagine.
And I've released this on Twitter just before to plug the podcast, but it comes actually from our good friend Cunnington Len, and I'm not going to reveal his source, but he's got contacts with a lot of ex-players, and this is an ex-player and an ex-Premier League manager who has been allegedly approached by an intermediary going, if the West Ham manager position was available in the summer, would you be interested?
Carrick.
Yes. How do you know that?
Now, well, ex-Premier League player and current manager,
Yeah.
So he is now, can we semi-officially say he's very much considered for the role if it becomes available?
I don't know that. Look, it's not one of my regular sources, and on the podcast you can listen more than just the podcast latest episode. You'll hear it in the words from Cunnington Len, who broke it on the podcast, which we've just put up an hour ago. I know no more on that. Cunnington Len is well connected in ex-player circles. I'm not going to name the people he knows, but he knows a lot of people. If you've seen films, and obviously this rumor is going around those circles, right?
Interesting.
I'm trying to get it clarified and see if someone can get to him, etc. But I've taken it at face value, and I've told it here tonight at face value. If Carrick comes out tomorrow and goes completely not true, fair enough. But
then he would do so. He would say that
he
whilst he's in
probably
a
would.
job. And,
While he's in a job and while Moyes is in a job, is he going to admit it anyway? And the way I was told, it was an intermediary. It wasn't the club. It was all, if the job was available and you were available, kind of thing.
It's one of those conversations you have in a pub over a beer, and oh, by the way, if this, if that, if the other.
And the only thing that sort of didn't make sense to me is when does Tim Steidten come in on that? That's not very inspiring. Really, is that a temporary stopgap? What would be that? Where you'd think that Tim Steidten would have one of his picks. So I don't know. I'm going to try and get confirmation on that. I've put some feelers out.
Could it be?
But I'm giving it to you, literally an hour after it's been said on our podcast.
And thank you for that. I mean, people are making comments about Carrick. Carrick is not bad. Let's get that Montana's comment up. I prefer Rob Edwards. Carrick is an old West Ham style appointment. Andrew Carrick is doing a good job at Borough, but I'd be underwhelmed if he was to become our next manager. Interesting. Carrick needs more experience. Carrick seems like a cheap option. Now, that's the thing that'll be thrown at Sullivan, of course.
Yeah.
But
just to be clear, this is not coming from the senior source. This is, as I've been clear, I haven't asked the senior source and whoever the senior source may be. But at the moment, this is unsubstantiated. But
okay, but it's an interesting rumor. It's an interesting one because his name has been bandied around by a lot of fans that they would like him to become manager. It's interesting what's being said here. A lot of people are saying he's maybe not ready, but it is also a good point what you said. Where does Tim Steidten come in? Because you kind of imagine that. I mean, let's look at the way he appointed Alonso. Alonso wasn't necessarily a big name manager when he went to Bayer Leverkusen. He was managing the B team at Real Madrid and stuff like that. So he wasn't exactly established. So maybe this might be something that Steidten might like. He may have done
who knows?
bit of research on him.
Who knows?
Interesting.
I promised you free exclusives. I've delivered free exclusives.
You have indeed. Well, ish. But I'll take it.
Hey, what do you want? What do you want, Stel?
Well, people are asking how they can listen to your podcast, and so for people,
it's on Spotify, it's on YouTube, it's on Tuned In, it's on Acast. I link to it on Twitter if you follow me on Twitter. It's on every platform.
And it is.
I
really
particularly
is
like Spotify. I listen to it back on Spotify. Where we were voted last year the most West Ham fan produced podcast, most listened to.
That was my idea. If you're on Comedy Central.
Not on Comedy Central, no. But look, sure. Canning Townend does a great impression of David Sullivan, and you can see Canning Townend. Can you see one of his paintings in my study just coming up of
of that number 41 player that used
to so I've got a big print of him. Just a little plug, he can still do portraits and prints, Canning Townend, for Christmas time if you go to canningtown.com before Christmas, if you're stuck for a present, by the way. Little plug there.
I haven't spoken to him I ought to message him. I haven't spoken to him for a while. Sean, thank you. Much appreciated.
That's all right.
I'll recover what you said as I go through the show. But there you go, 3 exclusives. Moyes isn't going to be sacked. I guess we kind of knew that. We've got an investor, potentially Robert Bobby Kotick, which a lot of people seem to know about in the chat because they've gone, oh God, not him. And then you've heard the exclusive, I guess you're all waiting for. If we are going to replace David Moyes at the end of the season, potentially Michael Carrick is a name that's being bandied around.
Well, he's been asked about his availability. There's a difference with that, just smooth it out. I'm sure a lot of conversations. If I'm honest with you, right? Any decent, well-run club would have a plan B. And, it could be that David Moyes decides not to renew his contract. It would be good to have a number of options and not just one. So let's not try and make it something it's not, that maybe Michael Carrick is the only name in the hat. And
no, he will be amongst a number of options.
Yeah.
Based on that, a quick question, Sean. A couple of weeks ago, we were when the Will Still rumor was being bandied around. Will Still apparently made some kind of comment like, "I'd be happy to come in a bigger club as a number 2," or something to that effect. And I suggested, what would the fans think if Moyes stayed to have someone like Will Still come in and shadow him? Do you think that's the sort of thing that Moyes is his own man, isn't he?
No.
He wouldn't want to do that.
I can't imagine Moyes doing that. Look, I asked senior source about Will Still. Will Still, he admires what he's done. He thinks it's way too soon. He follows his career with interest. Never say never, famous word of his. But I don't think we're going to see Will Still here anytime soon. Look, Will Still loves the attention, right? I think it's annoying his French club. And he's living the dream, watching it and being linked. And he's doing nothing to persuade people off of that story, because one day he might, but not anytime soon, and not under David Moyes.
Sean, always a pleasure. Thank you very much.
No, thanks for having me on. And
I'm sure I'll be speaking to you after the show, or soon
talk to you next year on the show. Maybe I'll come on from a once a year appearance next year.
Well, the minute you have another exclusive you want to share with us, then you're always welcome.
You didn't
Sean.
keep me waiting for too long, and I'm surprised.
No, I bloody well didn't, because I know you would have just logged off.
You usually don't start the show on time, so I'm impressed.
Well, actually, I didn't start the show on time either today.
Oh, okay. You're only a minute or two late.
Cheers,
anyway,
Sean.
enjoy.
Thank
All
you,
right,
mate.
see you, mate.
Bye-bye. So there you have it. A bit different. Some exclusives-ish. So Sean has said, despite whatever is being said in media, and especially by Sullivan about this next 2 games are very, very important, it's not going to make a difference to David Moyes' tenure at West Ham United. I think we already know that anyway. I mean, it would have to be a pretty drastic situation for West Ham United to decide to sack Moyes halfway through the season. And if you think about last season, when we were fighting a relegation battle, the statements coming out from the club at the time were the same. We have no intention of letting go of the manager. So I don't know why people are thinking that perhaps things might be different now, when, all right, the football hasn't been great. Let's not beat about the bush. The football hasn't been great, but given that we're 9th in the league, we're not looking at a relegation battle. We're still in the League Cup. We're in the quarterfinals, which I genuinely think we're going to win in one way or another to get to the semi-finals. We're already through to the next round of the Europa League. It's just a matter of now whether we finish top of that group or whether we finish second. If we finish top, we avoid a playoff in February by teams that are coming down from the Champions League, or we go through to the knockout stages in March. So given that, I think we already knew that David Moyes is not likely to be sacked anytime soon. I mean, we're going to have a total collapse, aren't we, for West Ham to turn around and say, thank you and farewell, David Moyes. But at the end of the season, yes, it is very, very likely. And then the other exclusive, as he said, a potential name for an American investor, Robert Bobby Kotick, which seems one or two of you know about him in the chat. And it doesn't sound like it'll be a very welcome investment if that actually happens. And then the third exclusive is that Michael Carrick's name is well up there now in terms of a potential replacement, but not an definite, but a potential replacement for David Moyes should the opportunity come about. So what I'm going to do, I've gone back up to your comments, and we're going to carry on where we left off. I'm going to go through the show, and then at the end of the show, at the end of the updates, etc., that I normally do, we will then talk about David Moyes. We'll talk about the performances, what you think, etc., because it's all quite interesting, isn't it? So let's scroll down. Where did we leave off from? Let's scroll down to, here we go. So Montana, my names for potential replacements, Edwards, Frank, Fonseca, and someone optimistic and proactive. I will add to that Marco Silva. I really like him. I think what he's doing at Fulham, and not just because they spanked us 5-0, but I think he could be a potential as well. If the board want to bring someone in who's got Premier League experience, Marco Silva could be another one on that name potentially. Garino, we've all recovered from the Moyes disaster. Have we all recovered? Kind of. It was disappointing. Galispera to you, Keith. I hope you're well. Thank you for joining, mate. Good evening, Rani. I hope you're well. Thank you for joining as well. Bill, good evening to you, mate. After all the negativity surrounding that poor performance, getting into 6th place, I need to hear Stell's balanced opinion in all the rooms. I will come to it. I was disappointed. But every time we talk about, we're ready to take that next step, we're ready to move on up, what happens? We always fuck it up, don't we? James, good evening to you. I don't like the noise that's coming out of the club regarding Moyes. Do you know what? And I just wonder, it's really interesting, James, how much of that noise is not coming out of the club, but is actually coming out of the fan base. We seem to have gotten to the point now that we seem to run our own, not rhetoric, our own. We seem to want to create our own news. I think because this Moyes, I'll tell you something, this Moyes out, Moyes in thing has become such a distraction to the fan base. It seems that we're kind of now clouded over the, I put a comment up the other day about something about Moyes, and I immediately got jumped on by someone who thought I was Moyes out. And he said, "Oh, you'll get that from my Moyes out brigade." And I went, "Well, mate, hang on a minute. If you actually watch my shows and listen to what I say, I'm far from being Moyes out. I am on the fence. That fence I sit on has got a lot of splinters in it, but I'm far from being." But it's interesting now. It seems that we end up having to, automatically everyone's taking sides, and that everyone thinks that you're either out or in. You can be, as a lot of people have been saying, Moyes indifferent. Whilst he's here, I'll support him. When he's gone, I'll applaud him, thank him, and then move on to support the next manager. Good evening to you, Mark. I hope you're well. Is Moyes' lackluster of squad rotation purely down to not trusting the players, or does blindly believe the same players can play every match, or is he just a moron? I said, I know you put a bit of joke in there, but it's an interesting thing. It does make me wonder. But we're going to talk about that as well. I mean, damned if you do, damned if you don't when it comes to being a manager and squad rotation. Because if you rotate the squad, fans say, well, you should be playing your strongest team. If you don't rotate your squad, fans say, well, of course, you're driving him into the ground. They're all knackered. Not surprised because you're not squad rotating. Now, there are different ways, I believe. I've talked about this before. I think there are different ways of doing it where you don't have to necessarily make wholesale changes, but you can bring players in rather than with 2 minutes to go. You can bring players in like with 15, 20 minutes to go. Or when we go a goal down and try and affect the game and change the outcome of the game. Which other managers do, which Moyes doesn't do. So there are ways of doing it. And unfortunately, Moyes, I don't know. I can't decide anymore whether he's actually got favourites or whether he just doesn't think there are certain players good enough to deliver for West Ham anymore. P. Gads, good evening to you. Has Wilder swings than my bipolar girlfriend? James, I wish everyone at the club would keep their gobs tight shut, which will only put a bigger divide in the fans camp. Can there be a bigger divide, James? Is worrying. Good evening, Hammers Mikey. How some fans can still defend him, the mind boggles. Then fans can follow that senile old clown out the door. Well, now, by the way, not picking at you, Mikey. Let's all be polite to each other and agree to disagree on certain comments, because there are Moyes in and there are Moyes out that watch this show. There are Moyes indifferents as well. But let's be civil. Not just you, but everyone. Good evening to you, Howard. I hope you're well. Thank you for joining, mate. Good evening, Hammerette. How are you? I hope you're well. Who else have we got? Steve, good evening. Hello, mate. I hope you're well. Dusty Dockets, good evening to you. Kerry's Matthews Blues Show on Radio 2. I like blues, so I'll give that a listen. Thank you for the plug. Juha, good evening to you. I hope you're well, mate. Thank you for joining. Flamer, how are you, mate? No excuses, Stel. Moyes will ruin our fan base. the divide he's created is unacceptable. But he's not created the divide. We, unfortunately, whether we like it or not, I think we've created the divide because we seem to these days not be able to debate things. I mean, I get heated. We all get heated. You should see me at a game, when I'm really pissed off. I'm effing blinding and C word and everything. And, we all get upset. But I think we've lost. I'm not saying you guys. I think I've got a really nice following. The way you guys talk, in the chats, etc. I'm not sort of like just saying it for the sake of it, but 99% of you can debate things really well. We get the odd person that comes and goes that doesn't want to debate, but you guys are good at debating. But I think, unfortunately, there's a lot in the fan base, especially when you look on Twitter. My goodness, don't know why I've gone back onto that platform. But when you look on Twitter, there is no debating. That people are down your throats, whether you're Moyes in, Moyes out, or Moyes indifferent. So I don't know whether Moyes has always been the way he is. You listen to Everton fans, and they'll tell you this is his style, this is his approach, etc. And it's up to us to not be happy with it, but debate it rather than it. I think our fan base has divided itself, to be honest with you. Let's scroll down. Good evening, Brendan. I hope you're well. Would not want Deitch. Good manager, but the next one needs to bring a different style. Yeah, I agree with that. Dusty again. Never want a team of squaddies like Deitch puts together. Rather stick with Moyes. There you go. The difference in opinion. Good evening to you, Peter. I hope you're well. Moyes is still the most successful manager at our club, which is true statistically. Paul, good evening to you. Been very lucky in games. No surprise when you play a team that take the chances that we give them. And we have, boy, oh boy, have we given them chances. And Fulham took them all. I think they might have had, I haven't looked at the stats. They might have had about 7 or 8 shots on target and 5 of them went in. Garino, for me, it's not about losing badly on Sunday. It was how Moyes reacted by bringing on 2 defenders. But there's a reason for that as well when I go into the review of and I'm not going to make an excuse, but there is a good reason why he brought 2 defenders on. Stephen, evening to you, mate. Beat Tottenham, lose to Fulham. You said that after Palace, didn't I say it? And I wish I hadn't. It's really annoying that I kind of almost half jokingly said it, and it effing well came true. Adam, our performances are over the last 2 months have been poor. We've been lucky because we have won a couple. We've overlooked the performances, but 5-0, that's when the shit hit the fan. Not good. Good evening to you, Keith. I hope you're well. Being a fan 50-odd years, we win, lose and draw. I think the only thing to think about is team rotation and using all 5 subs. He did it, didn't he? I think he had no choice, though, because of the issues that we've got within the squad, which I'm going to talk about. But don't get me wrong. I'm not going to talk about them as being excuses. Sometimes there are excuses. When Moyes talks about, the fixture schedule, etc., I think, mate, no. But when it comes to things like player illnesses, players carrying knocks, etc., that's a different matter. Dean, good evening to you. Who is responsible for the players being shattered? Who doesn't make substitutions and continues to flog the same players? It's a good point, and it's a valid point. Montana, please, Stel, do a show to compare the net spend of all the top 10 teams, if possible, to quantify his claims that we are off teams. I think that's rubbish. What he said, that's the sort of thing that it upsets me as well. When David Moyes starts talking about teams like Newcastle and teams like Villa and suggesting that we can't get to top 6 because of their capacity to spend more money, etc., it's, mate, come on. I said earlier in the show, at the beginning of the show, Kent Hammers asked me earlier on today, do I know what the net spend has been since David Moyes has returned for the second time? And the net spend is around 230 odd million pounds. We've bought about 480 odd million pounds worth of players, and we've sold about 255 million pounds worth. So the net spend is around about 230. But it would be interesting to compare the net spend to other clubs. That's a really good idea. Hammerett, we've been shy for quite a few consecutive matches now with luck on our side for a few wins. It just so happens that Fulham took the easy options that we gave them. Boy, didn't they just. Lee, good evening to you, mate. I hope you're well. Not good enough for West Ham yesterday. Very, very poor. It was awful. I mean, standing there and watching go. I mean, my mate that I was with, Paul Williams, I think just before the 4th goal went in, he went, pub. And I went, yeah, let's give it a few more minutes. I don't know what I was expecting. Was I expecting us to score a goal? I'm not too sure. Then they scored the 4th. He went, I'm going for a piss. I'll see you downstairs. And then I left just on, more or less the end of the game. And I don't even know how many minutes was added on in extra time. But as I was walking up the stairs, they scored the 5th goal. And I was like, anyway, Jerry, good evening to you. It's not a bad day it's not just a bad day at the office. We've had lots of them. Results aside, our performances have been desperate. We have scraped a few wins like Burnley, where we were lucky. Mikey, you wait. I'll get you all back, Howard. Don't worry. Mikey, Dyson Dave, sucking the life out of the soul out of this club. Its players and its fans. We fluked to win against Spurs. I disagree with that. I actually do, and I'll come to that later on. Let's be honest, we've messed up the whole season so far. We have fluked the whole season so far to be 9th. I say you make your own luck. But I really do disagree that we fluked to win. I really do. And it's not because it was against Spurs, but I think we played exceptionally well in the second half, which demonstrates that we can do it. We've got it in us. Moyes has got it in him to put a team out to perform like they did in the second half. So I don't think it was a fluke. Henry, imagine a good manager, but with Moyes' budget to spend in the transfer window, we might get that. Good morning to you, Alan. I hope you're well, mate. Shit game from shit manager. Let's scroll down. How far behind am I? Quite a bit. Montana. Moyes is used to teams struggling to stay in the league and aspiring to get to Europe. Once you get there, he starts dithering. Today on TalkSport, plenty of Everton fans were on our side regarding Moyes. Everton fans, told us what he's like. We knew what he was like. But here's the irony, isn't it? When we were winning and doing well, when we were finishing 6th and 7th, we loved it. But now, when things are sort of like a bit like last season, relegation battle should never have happened. And this season, it could be worse. We are 9th, but it could be worse. But we're not happy now. Brendan, even if Thursday is a loss, there's still European football in the new year, which is true. There is still a success, even though not the best case scenario. But to win the cup, we'd have beaten the big boys anyway. That's a really good point. I actually asked Sean earlier when we were talking about, him coming on, etc. And I said, so what your exclusives, does this mean Moyes is going to go regardless at the end of the season? He said, no, not necessarily. And I know people won't want to hear this. I said, what happens if we win a trophy? What happens if we qualify for Europe next season, either through the league or by winning a trophy? And he said, it's quite possible then that he'll stay. And I know we don't want to hear it, but to actually have European football, I think we'll miss out next season. But if we do get into Europe for the 4th season in a row, what's the board going to do? I mean, can you really see them saying thank you very much and farewell? I'm really not sure. Epic. He's not a shit manager, but his football is boring to watch and he won't progress further. And we won't progress further until Moyes is gone. Peter, I don't believe West Ham supporters will get a better manager than Moyes whilst we have the present ownership regime. That's an interesting point. Is it the owners? Is that why Tim Steidten is now finally here? Trodge, it was same during COVID. Every time all the results went our way and all the teams above us lost, we then messed it up. It's so true. And we messed it up as well. It's a mental thing, a mentality thing. Absolutely. Trodge again. We had 5 chances to go into Champions League places, always failed versus the easier teams. And isn't it the massive irony that we do really, really well against the harder teams, and then we mess it up against the teams that we should be beating? Dean, I'm sorry, I missed this. Could you ask Sean if it's true that Moyes will have a big say in the future, his future at the club at the end of the season? Maybe we've answered that. It could be, like I've just said, if Moyes is successful again at the end of this season, then who's to say why he wouldn't have I can't honestly see the board turning around to David Moyes and going, you've been successful again, you've won us a trophy, or you've got us back into Europe, or both. Farewell. I can't see that. I think they will give him an opportunity to turn around and say what he wants to do. He, as Sean said earlier on, might turn around and say, I don't want to stay. I want to just move on or whatever. Victor, the defeat was down to Moyes' poor man management of his squad, not rotating. Bill, Middle Eastern investors look for more than 10%. Absolutely. Which is why the Qatari thing was never going to take off the ground. Because they want bragging rights. They need to own and have the best club or potential to have the best US investors only looking to profit. You are absolutely spot on, Bill, which is why the Qatari story, unless they were actually going to buy the club outright, is never likely to happen. And given that Sullivan has kept saying, I'm not ready to sell, I'm not ready to move on, the Qatari thing won't happen. But you're absolutely spot on about Americans. They're looking for an investment. Trip Smith, who owns 8% of West Ham, he's been with us for a number of years. He's not looking to move on. He knows it's a nice little earner. Daniel Kretinsky, he's not going to look at any more than this, 27% ownership. He's got every opportunity now to buy Vanessa Gold's 10% shares, the ones that she's selling. We've not heard any story about Daniel Kretinsky wanting to buy any more shares, which will elevate him and get him closer to outright ownership of the club. So I think those two stories are now null and void. The Qatari deals or potential Qatari takeovers and the Daniel Kretinsky takeover. You remember how many years, the minute Kretinsky signed on the dotted line, a lot of people were saying it's only a matter of time. It's only a matter of time. He's going to take over. He's going to elevate us. He's going to invest money, etc., etc. He's never been interested in owning the club outright. He's interested because it's a good investment for him, and that continues. So now he's got the opportunity to buy the 10% shares that Vanessa Gold is selling. He's not taken up that opportunity. So it's evident to me that he's an investor, and you're absolutely right. We're going to get an American who is also going to be an investor, buying those shares. That chap, I've got to look him up because I don't know much about him. Robert Kotić. It seems that a lot of you don't like him. Adam, whatever happens in the summer, we need to buy players with pace. We haven't had it for years now, and it's costing us. I totally agree with you. Let's scroll down, and I'll try and catch up, and then I'll get on with other parts of the show. Clive, good evening to you, mate. To be fair, Sean, I never thought for a minute that Moyes would be getting sacked. Firstly, it would cost Sullivan money. Secondly, the replacement probably tied up till the summer. The first thing, let's be honest, Clive, there's not a lot of, he's got half a year left on his contract. I think he's on about £3 or £4 million a year. It'll cost a couple of mil, if we wanted to move him on now, if the board did. So I don't think that comes into it anymore. The second part of your statement is probably more appropriate, that the manager that we want is likely to be tied up until the summer. Rani, Q, how do I listen to more than podcast live and how to send a Q? Right, okay. So go into Facebook or go to Twitter, and it's West Ham Football. Look for the what do you call them? The handle West Ham Football, which is Sean's account, and then you'll be able to see links there. And then in Twitter and then also in Facebook, where they've got a more than just a podcast page, you can ask questions there. They take questions before every show. Let's scroll down. Let's try and catch up. Obsidian. He's a total wanker. Milks the players. I'm a gamer, and Activision are hated. I'm guessing this is Kotić that you're talking about. Garino. Sounds like someone who won't invest his own cash, but is looking to make a quick buck. There you go. Andrew. Sean's demeanor isn't filling me with confidence. It's his way. That's why he does podcasts, not YouTube. I'm not taking the piss. You'll probably agree to that. Let's scroll down again. Trudge. Football clubs should never have been sold off in the first place. Should have been protected under heritage laws. Should have done the German way, where fans have an investment. Isn't that ironic? Do you remember an investment that we were all invited to take part in, and we didn't want it? The bond scheme. If more fans had bought into the bond scheme, I'm not saying it was right at the time, don't get me wrong, but if more fans had gone for the bond scheme, we might have had, part ownership of the club now in some way. Well, you live and learn. Bill, there will be lots of names mentioned in this way. Smoke and mirrors, keeping the actual coach who has been sorted by Steiden out of the picture. Good point. We were talking about Carrick, and that's a really good point. Do forgive me. I can't mention every single comment. I wish I could, but I can't. And I'm trying to get through them and trying to be equal to as many people, give them a voice as well. Jerry, we're used to rumours at West Ham that don't seem to materialise. Might as well stick with Moyes than go for Carrick. No pedigree. Interesting. Danny, I think that are we all a little bit like yes, no, Carrick? Is it more yes or is it more no? It's an interesting one. Danny, good evening to you. I really like Gary O'Neill. Don't know why. Also, the Alonso rumours. Would he cut it in the Premier League? I think we can kind of like... look, I would like Alonso. I think he's done superbly at Bayer Leverkusen, considering it's his first proper senior management role. The Bundesliga is... there's a few teams around there that can handle themselves. So it is quite a competitive league. So I think he is doing exceptionally well. Would he cut it in the Premier League? You've had managers come and go, foreign managers come and go in the Premier League. Some have been very successful, others haven't. I think the Alonso rumours, a lot of people are saying, why would he come to West Ham? Yes, there's a Steidten connection, but then he could maybe go to Liverpool. He's got a Liverpool connection, an ex-Liverpool connection, and he could go to Real Madrid, an ex-Real Madrid connection as well. Adam, who's to say Carrick wouldn't succeed? What you all have crystal balls. He could do a good job. We don't know. Yeah, we don't know. Good evening to you, Debbie and Mark. Good evening, Mark. Stell's got competition. Highly unlikely, mate. Christopher, good evening to you. I keep hearing Gary O'Neill mentioned. I think that's more fan base mentions Gary O'Neill than it is about, sort of any rumours coming around. Wouldn't be averse to him coming in at some point. But this is my big question, like the likes of Carrick, the likes of Gary O'Neill. Yeah, we like them. But I'd ask the same question. How do we know that they would be successful? Would it be too much for them to handle? We talk about wanting, a young manager, a forward-thinking manager, etc. But don't we also want a young, forward-thinking manager that's got some experience, like proper experience, either in one of the big leagues around Europe or the Premier League itself? Let's see who else we've got. Andrew. Gary O'Neill, definitely one to watch. Been impressed, but Alonso is out of our reach now. Bigger clubs are circling. Flammer, don't believe a word he said. Moyes will get lost on Sunday. Carrick will not be our manager, and investment will be Barack Obama. That'd be nice. I'm guessing he's a nice person. Hammerett, opposites attracts. The second oldest, most experienced manager to one of the youngest inexperienced one. There you go. We go from one extreme to another. Bill. I would say Rafael Marquez, currently Barcelona B coach, would be my Steidten bet. Good shout. Follows the Alonso MO. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, I like that. Good shout. Good shout. He plucked Alonso out of B team management. You're absolutely right. Mr. Mace, good evening to you. Sullivan shouldn't be anywhere near the next managerial appointment. The same div who employed Avram Grant. He's clueless. Steidten should choose. I think Steidten, from what we understand, is going to have a very, very big say in who's going to be our future manager. Mandy, first, how much will Sully give a new manager to spend? If it's very little, then Carrick would be favourite. I think we're past that stage. I think it's been proven over the years that we have spent money. I keep saying we've spent money, but we've not spent it wisely. That's been the big difference between West Ham and many other clubs. I think many other clubs have not even spent as much as us, but they've spent it carefully and wisely. And I think that's why Steidten is now here to help us spend the money in the right way. Rowley, good evening to you, mate. Thank you very much. Someone like Alonso to set our creative players free, but I don't think we'll get him. I don't think so either. Flammer, he said nothing clear still. I don't trust him. Got that feeling about him. If you know Sean, you might know how right you are there. Trog, talking this much about potential sacking after losing one game after a record start to the league is cringe, even if football hasn't been all that. It's weird, isn't it, to be quite honest with you, Trog, and I don't want to keep banging that. I mean, I think Peter said it earlier on, he is our best manager at West Ham through the stats, and it is one of the better starts to the season that we've had for a long, long time in the Premier League, and it is baffling. I get it because the football isn't great. I don't disagree with that. It is difficult. Sometimes I try and sugarcoat it, especially when I'm at games and I've got Wiggy chewing my ear off about how bored he is and he doesn't know if he's going to go to any other games. He'll be moaning when we go to Liverpool next week, all that. But he'll still go. And I've got to admit the football hasn't been great. But lucky or not, I think we're getting the results and the odd occasion when we do get, well, we don't get battered, do we? It's a one-off that was against Fulham at the weekend. Evening, Julie. I hope you're well. And Julie, good luck for Tuesday. I hope it all goes well for you and recover soon. Daniela, Liverpool are now in a title race with Man United before us and Arsenal after us. How strong will they be next Wednesday? See, I think, I kind of feel that I think they're there for the taking. God, I know I'm, half glass full, man. But goodness me, I think we can beat them. I think we can beat Liverpool next week. Andrew, Villa sack Gerrard and bring in Emery. West Ham let Moyes go and go for Carrick. So many better options. Show some ambition. Let's be clear. Sean did say, it's a rumor. Nothing's been substantiated, nothing's been confirmed, but it's a rumor that's being bandied around. Carrick has been talked about before, but Sean made it very clear in saying, look, it's right now at this moment in time, the rumor is circulating, especially around ex-West Ham players, that Carrick is a potential. Rani, the YouTube channels want their content, but they all claim to have sources and use the information. People like Sean get out freely and sometimes treat it like it's fact. Well, Sean is closely connected, and his senior source is really a senior source. And he actually sends me screenshots of the messages. And, the one thing with Sean is he may not be everyone's cup of tea, but when he talks about a potential exclusive, he's normally very, very close, if not 100% spot on. Montana. This season is so tough. We need consistency to be up there. Everton are so impressive. I couldn't even imagine their results. They will get out of relegation and they will stay out of relegation despite the 10-point loss that they've incurred. Ray, good evening to you, mate. There seems to be more injuries this season in the Premier League. It could all be waiting around for VAR decisions. Not good for the circulation. Do you know that's a really good shout? That's a really good shout. Players standing around waiting, their muscles go cold, and then they're asked to sort of start playing again immediately. Good point, Martin. I'm definitely Moyes indifferent. I support him as long as he stays. Thanks for everything if he goes. Yeah. Brendan, I support West Ham. Players and managers come and go. Very good. Very, very true. Shaky, WHU have set their sights higher than Carrick, $500 million squad and a tuppence gaffer. That's a really good point as well. If they're spending all this money on players and continue to invest in the squad, do they really want someone like Carrick to get? Maybe, like I said earlier, maybe they want someone that's got a little bit more experience to be able to get the best out of this squad. Carrick could do it. I'm not saying that he won't. He could do it. 1K, good evening to you. Stella, if you were sitting opposite Moyes on a train, you could ask him one question. What would it be? I would ask him, why is he so stubborn with his substitutions and not utilising the squad to the full effect? Now, let's qualify this, because I would ask that as a fan. I don't stand there watching the team training at Rush Green, so I don't know what's going on. He could easily turn around to me and say, come to Rush Green for a day, and then you decide who you want to pick in the first 11 and which subs you want to bring on after you've seen them training. He might be seeing stuff that we clearly don't. I keep going on about Cornet. Why is Cornet not being played? It could be he doesn't train hard enough. It could be that his mindset is not there and he's not trying to fight enough to get in the team. It could be that. It could be something else. It could be that Moyes is asking or the coaches are asking the players to do things in training that they're just not delivering. And so when it comes to team selection, it makes Moyes' choice simpler. But that's what I'd like to know. Excuse me. That's what I'd like to know about David Moyes, is what makes him decide who's going to be the first 11, and then what makes him decide to continuously pick the same players from the subs bench to come on. What is the logic in that? And why leave it so late? Why not make changes to affect a game rather than reacting to a game? Would be good to know. Andrew, our eyes don't lie. The football is abysmal. If it was fantastic, we would all be praising Moyes. Even when we win, the football is painful to watch. But there are games. The second half against Spurs was superb. The last 15, 20 minutes against Burnley was great. There are games where you watch it and you go, for God's sake, something happened. And then something happens and you go, where did that come from? Where did that move, that sort of run of play come from? The second half at Spurs was probably one of the, all right, it should be for a whole 90 minutes. Don't get me wrong. We shouldn't only be doing it for just half a game or the last 15 minutes of a game and stuff like that. But the second half against Spurs was some of the best football we played. We pressed, we controlled them at their ground. We made them make the errors that they did in order for us to score. Had we not pressed, had we sat back just like we did in the second half against Fulham, even though we were 3-0 down, we weren't pressing, and you could see Bowen at the front going, guys, what the hell's going on? Let's do what we did against Spurs. Let's move forward as a unit. Let's press them, because that's what won us the game at Spurs, so some of the football has actually been really good. But the upset is we have to go through a lot of dross to get to that half, or that 20 minutes, or that half an hour, or that last 15 minutes of decent football. It should be, the whole game. Keith, it's bizarre how the league is presently smaller clubs beating larger clubs, and we sit in the middle. Yeah, because we are a medium-sized club. Rupert, I've got an unused Fulham ticket available if anyone needs it. Poor Rupert wasn't allowed into the game at the weekend because of his bag being too big. I've never heard such dross. Mate, such a shame you weren't allowed in, seriously. But like I told you, I would have thrown the bag over the hedge and picked it up after the game. Mind you, it probably did you a favour, Roops. Ultra. I don't like the sound of that Bobby Kotick. He wouldn't be a good owner, in my opinion. He has less money than Sullivan. I really fear that crook Sullivan will sell us to a bigger bunch of crooks. Don't misunderstand. This isn't about buying the club out. This is about the 10% that Vanessa Gold is selling, which she's got Rothschilds to do the, find a buyer for. And Kotick's name came up today as being a potential investor. So it's not about buying the whole club. It's about buying the 10% that Vanessa Gold is selling. Brendan, we need a new manager. We want more. We need a new manager. We want Moyes. Other than the Toffees, this sentence may never have been uttered. Monumental. You can see on some West Ham fan channels stories made up about Moyes as clickbait. Certain ones I don't bother watching. Look, for whatever, from my understanding, everyone seems to have a source. Whether that's true or not, I don't know, because I don't have time to watch a lot of other channels. I do on occasion, every now and again. But whenever a story comes out, I do ask Sean. I say, this has come out, any truth behind it? And he'll say, no, it's a load of bollocks. He'll say, yes, there is an element of truth, but it's been twisted. Or yes, there is truth, and it is exactly what's been said. So it is difficult. I feel sorry for you guys as viewers. You don't know what to watch and what to listen to and what to believe and what not to believe. What I'm trying to do, I get it right. I don't know. I always try to substantiate any stories. I don't get it right all the time. I hear stuff. I don't know if it's true, but I do trust Sean. I've known him for quite a long time. I do trust him. I know he's got connections. Doesn't make me any better than any of the other channels, but the one thing I don't like doing, and hopefully, I don't know if I get it right or not, Monumental. I hope I don't do clickbait. You wait till the next show. It'll be clickbait all over it. Hit the like. Thank you, Clive. Much appreciated. If you're new to the channel, do hit the like button. Do hit the subscribe button. Do hit the bell notification. I'm so close to 5,000 viewers. Very chuffed. If I get there before Christmas, I'll throw you a Christmas party. There won't be any alcohol for you, but I'll be drinking all right. Ian, good evening to you, mate. I hope you're well. Glenn, just more smoke and mirrors leaked from the board so we take our eyes off the ball, which in this case is Moyes. Truly think it's best for all concerned. We part company soon. It won't happen. I do believe that unless we absolutely collapse, I don't think Moyes is going anywhere until the end of the season. Andrew, Moyes loves to gaslight the media and fans. He thinks we're all idiots. He does love to gaslight us. And it is like, oh, for God's sake, mate. Good evening, Ian. I hope you're well. Thank you for joining. Good evening to you, Delton. How are you? This drubbing was on the cards. Villa manager comments to fixtures and rest so different. Are you half a sentence there? Mr. Mace, fans have always disagreed with each other. Just gets highlighted nowadays because of social media. Villa keyboard warriors who get brave holding their phones but wouldn't say nothing face to face. Probably true. Ian, I've decided I know nothing about football anymore. Watch West Ham for donkey's years, and whoever the manager is, we have ups and downs for years. It's the West Ham way. And isn't it just? We kind of think that all this stuff is happening since Moyes' era. Boy, oh boy, you know it, mate. You know it, Ian. We've had moments with dare I say it, some of our better managers or some of our famed managers, and there's always been fans that have not, either been for or against a manager, and it isn't new. It isn't just Moyes. We've had it for years. It does seem to be the West Ham way, which is a shame in a way. Let's scroll down. David, it was a fluke still. The players urged Moyes to change at halftime. JWP said this after the game. I haven't seen that story. I think someone else mentioned this to me earlier on. It's like the players decided to do their own thing, against Spurs in the second half. If that's the case, then why didn't we do our own thing against Fulham at the weekend? Why only Spurs and then not at Fulham? I don't know. I'm not saying JWP didn't say that, but I wonder if it's just been slightly skewed for people to suggest that that's what he was saying. Oh, we didn't care about Moyes. We went out and did our own thing. I don't know. Anthony, I like to see Danny Dyer, Ray Winston and Triple H, Russell Brand, who all support West Ham, put their hands in their pockets and buy West Ham. I don't think even them, with the greatest of respect to them, will have enough money to do that. Mr. Mace, the football style wasn't always this bad, though. The COVID season, we played some great stuff under Moyes. We absolutely did. Last 2 years, it's regressed star-wise. That's what frustrates people. It's a good point. Good point. I'll take that. How close am I? I'm going to get into the next part of the show in a minute. James, I asked in last week's show if we had a good leader on the pitch. You did indeed. I still don't see any one of them, not even Zuma. He's got to be shown a door at the end of the season. It's a really good point. I think you're right. I don't think we have a really natural leader on the pitch. And I think people are now saying, don't we miss Declan Rice? No. Because Declan Rice, in his last season at West Ham United, decided to play for Declan Rice rather than for West Ham United. He dictated what he wanted to do on the park, which impacted the way we played our game. Declan Rice believes he is an all-rounded box-to-box midfielder, which he isn't. And that's what he wanted to play last season. I think it disrupted us. Where is he playing for Arsenal at the moment? Holding midfield. Because what Declan Rice should have done is he should have said, I am a very good defensive midfielder. I want to become the best in Europe, the best in the world, and I'll continue at that. And I think we would have had a very different season in the Premier League if Rice had played defensive midfield rather than Moyes allowing him to play wherever he wanted. Let's scroll down. Bill, it's the nature of these wins, draws and losses, which is the problem for me. We have talented players, but being asked to play somewhere not suited to them. I get that. Do you know one thing we have a problem with in our squad is too many number 10s, too many central midfielders. That's the problem that we have. So you've got Fornals, you've got Kudus, you've got Paqueta, you've got a number of players that play in that middle of the park. We really do need. You've got Bone on one side. We really do need a dynamic player that can play out on the left. Imagine the difference, even if we don't have a striker. Imagine the difference of having a proper, dynamic, wide man on the left-hand side to complement Bowen on the right-hand side. And then having the likes of, I don't know, Alvarez, Ward-Prowse, Paqueta, and Kudus in the middle. Wouldn't that be different? Hammerit, what has hurt me quite a bit this weekend was that Moyes took no responsibility for the drubbing, that players were fatigued and the bug going round. It could be true, though, couldn't it? Right, let's stop there for a second. I will come back to your comments later on. What am I up to? Right, 10:09. So let's go into, ironically, a roundup, the first part of the show. So first off, it's all going to be quick. The women's team were back from international duty, and the West Ham women's team were back in Women's Premier League action. Another defeat. They lost 1-0 to Everton. That leaves us now bottom of the Women's League. That has been the worst start for West Ham women's for quite a number of years, and it's a shame. I did question Skinner, the manager, ability to do the job. She almost relegated Spurs last season, and she's about to relegate West Ham. And the irony is, she came out with comments earlier on today saying that we're going in the right direction. Well, if relegation is the right direction, give me the wrong direction. How about the under-21s? Well, they go from strength to strength to strength. The under-21s reached the last 16 of the Bristol Street Motors Trophy, which is the competition where development teams play lower league teams in Division 1, Division 2, etc. And it's the first time in our club's history to reach the last 16. A stunning 4-0 victory. A stunning 4-0 victory over Colchester United was our fourth win of the competition, and it stretches the under-21's unbeaten run to 15 games in all competitions. A number of senior squad players were in the team. Joseph Anang was in goal. Ben Johnson was playing in defence. Connor Coventry was holding midfield. And Divin Mubama was playing up front for the under-21s. The inclusion of these players kind of helped to the under-21s to control the game. Not that I think they needed it, because they're such an impressive side. Dan Chesters opened the scoring on 8 minutes when he headed home across from Callum Marshall. George Earthy made it 2-0 before Lewis Orford sent West Ham's third into the top corner from distance. Then Mubama rounded off a superb victory when he found the bottom corner from the edge of the box. The results mean the under-21s have now beaten Bristol Rovers, Cheltenham Town, Newport County and Colchester United in this competition. They've scored 12 goals in those 4 games, conceded just 1. The task now is to continue that run into the last 16. The under-21s are back in action next Monday when they play Crystal Palace away in Premier League 2. Absolutely superb job that Steve Potts is doing with these young lads. The under-18s are not to be outdone, of course. They started to defend their FA Youth Cup trophy, winners of the FA Youth Cup last season. They started to defend that in the FA Youth Cup round, third round at Rush Green, which was played last Friday at 7 p.m. They saw a dramatic penalty shootout to book a place in the 4th round. Southampton were the team that they were playing against, started at the brightest of the two, and they deservedly took the lead on 43 minutes. But then West Ham United showed what they have. With immense quality and character to overturn the lead in the second half. Favour for Wumney, remember that name as well, introduced after the break, struck the equaliser. And then it got to penalties at the end of the game. Ollie Skulls, Liam Jones and Josh Briggs all found the net from 12 yards, while Finley Herrick, our goalkeeper, made a number of superb saves to keep Southampton out. We will progress with a 4-2 win in the penalties, and we return to action, and we're going to face either Man City or Watford. That game may have already been played. I don't know what the result is. So if anyone knows who we're playing, whether it's Man City or Watford, do let me know. Under-18s return to action this Saturday when we've got Spurs away in the Premier League under-18s. How about some loan news? Well, interestingly, a number of players out on loan are injured. For example, Flynn Downs and Freddie Potts are both injured, so neither featured for either Southampton or Wycombe Wanderers at the weekend. However, 2 other West Ham loanees did get some rare game time. Kamari Swire was in action for Crawley Town as a second-half sub in the EFL League 2, and they recorded their 9th win of the season against Colchester. They're not having a good time of it, are they? Swire played the final few minutes of the fixture, making his 10th appearance for the team. Crawley now moved to 11th in the table, 9 wins, 8 defeats from their first 20 league matches. They've won 5 of their last 7 in all competitions. Look, he got a bit of game time, but I just, you do question if you're not getting an awful lot of game time, even in these leagues, where are you going with your career? Elsewhere, Keenan Appiah-Forsan played 90 minutes for Dagenham and Redbridge as they exited the FA Cup trophy at the 3rd round stage to Peterborough Sports. Despite having chances to win the game in normal time, Appiah-Forsan and company would fall to a 4-2 defeat on penalty kicks. So at least he got a bit of game time, but he only seems to be playing in games that are like cup competitions, etc. Right, a few headlines and some injury news. First up, Edson Alvarez. He missed the game against Fulham at the weekend because of recurrent illness. It's possible at this moment in time that he might miss the Freiburg game on Thursday. I think he's a massive loss if we don't have him. There's such a difference when he's playing. And I've said this so many times throughout the season. Alvarez is that pivot in the middle of the park where he protects the back four. Look how exposed we were against Fulham at the weekend. And yet, when we played against Spurs and he played virtually the whole game, we were a completely different unit in midfield. He's solid. He's really solid. And if we do miss him on Thursday, if he doesn't come back from his illness in time, I think that's quite worrying for us, to be quite honest with you. Lucas Paqueta apparently played through the pain barrier. He had a slight knock against Fulham. And but our understanding is that he should be fit enough to face Freiburg this coming Thursday. Alphonse Areola is still been out with a wrist injury. No jokes, please. But wouldn't have played in the Freiburg game anyway. So hopefully he'll be back in time for the game against Wolves at the weekend. Now, I'm going to talk about the team, of course. He's David Moyes. I don't know whether you agree with it or not. David Moyes has decided to give the squad 2 days off, Monday and Tuesday, and they'll be back in training on Wednesday. Now, I get it. There is a bug going round. It has been verified. It's not an excuse. It is confirmed that there is a bug going round, and it's impacted on a number of players. You can't make that sort of thing up, and I get it. People saying, oh, why use such an excuse? But unfortunately, it's a reality. It's a fact. It's a reality. We've had a bug going round. It's been affecting the club for quite a few weeks. If you remember, quite a few players came back after the international break and they were carrying bugs, and Alvarez was one of them. They played. It hasn't made it better for them. It's actually made it worse. So now we're missing players because of the bug that's going round. I'll come to a bit more on that in a moment. Let's carry on with this. Our FA Cup third round draw against Bristol City. The date's been set. It's another Sunday kickoff. We could have played this on a Saturday. But anyway, there you go. Another Sunday kickoff at 2 p.m. on the 7th of January. And season ticket holders will be able to start buying their tickets from tomorrow, is my understanding. Tomorrow being Tuesday. Right. Farewell to the porter cabins? Maybe. West Ham United are set to construct a new training building at Rush Green after a planning application was approved by Havering Council. There were previous plans in place approved by the council. The last one before was in June 2018, but due to COVID, nothing happened at that time. And then a second permission was granted in October 2021, which remained valid. But the club have made a number of changes to that proposal, and that's now being agreed as well. The statement said that historically, a private sports ground owned by Ford United Football Club what was originally on this site, but it was taken over by West Ham in 2009. Over the years, as we probably already know, it was used for youth and reserve team training, and now it's the base for the first team as well. So does that mean we're finally going to knock those porter cabins down and build a proper training complex? Who knows? There's no time or date to complete the works, but it has been approved. So watch out for that. Nice, beautiful a nice, beautiful complex for training might attract more players. You never know. Right. Let's go into, I'll tell you what, let's go into your chat and then we'll do the last part of the show, which is going to be about the games, about all the excuses that are being used as why we played so badly, etc., etc. And then I want your views on what you think about the squad being given 2 days off in order to recover from this illness that's going around. Daniela, Anthony, Laurie, Russell Band could be doing time if he's taken to court over sex allegations. He won't be in. It'll be prime for West Ham United to be part of West Ham United then. I'm joking. Mr. Mace, our own under-21s wouldn't have lost 5-0 at Fulham like that. It's easy to say, and you may not be wrong. We'll never know. Stoney, if Moyes does well enough to earn a new contract, there's still the question of which players will want to stay under his system. And again, these are the rumours. I won't stay if Moyes stays. We don't know that, to be quite honest with you. Jared Bowen has signed a 7-year deal because of this project. We still don't know what this project is. We're all making the assumption that this project that Bowen has signed up for is a Steidham project, which doesn't include Moyes. And I kind of think that's possibly quite true. But it'll be very interesting if Moyes is successful and he was asked to stay on. What then? Paddy, If Moyes did stay on at the end of the season, surely Steidon will walk. That would be bad news. Again, I don't really know, to be quite honest with you. Maybe the two men have come to an understanding of how they move forward and work together. Maybe. Old man. Can't wait for Stel to get the phoning machine and get wrong numbers to call local takeaway. Let's scroll down again. Carrick. And Carrick needs to do more at Borough before he gets a chance to manage in the Premier League. Another Gerrard and Lampard disaster class, a real possibility. It's a good point. It's a good point. Hammerit. Even if we'd gone for Stell's historical predicted lineup of keeper and 11 outfield players, we still wouldn't have stood a chance. You know that's not true. I never did such a thing. Guess what I found? I found the one football video the other day. I might treat you all for Christmas and show it. Sean, good evening to you, mate. I hope you're well. Never too early, mate, and never too late either. David, I think this 2-day break will be the end of Moyes. Gives a chance for a player meeting with Noble, then the board. Just watching Caesar drama. Yeah, I'm not so sure. John, we have to stop looking at ex-West Ham players for manager and go for the best qualified person who will be paid on where we feel. I agree. You get the best person in. It doesn't matter whether he's got a background at West Ham. I know traditionally we like to have some connection with West Ham. I know that's been the thing. That's been one of the core things that we've always wanted. But I agree with you. Get the best person in, whether he's ex-West Ham or not. Mark, good evening to you, mate. I hope you're well. I think I've had my fill of Moyes. I'm actually fed up hearing his name. 40 plus years following West Ham, and he's making it a chore. Time for entertainment. I had a bit of a debate with a viewer. He made a comment on one of my shows from the other day, and he said, I want to be entertained. I don't care about results. Really? Honestly and truly, are we talking... How interesting would it be if we got a manager in who's gone, I'm going to play the best football you've ever seen, but we might be losing every other week, and we might be in a relegation scrap. And but that's all right, isn't it? Because it's entertaining. Honestly, would you honestly take that? Now, I get it about, the entertainment side of things, and it's not that entertaining at the moment. I get that. But if we brought a manager in that was refreshing because he's using the youth and he's getting us to play a nice style of football, but guess what? Do you remember what we used to be called, West Ham United? West Ham are a great team to watch, but they've got a soft underbelly. Do you remember that? That was that weren't so long ago. That was just prior to, what's his name? Allardyce coming back, etc. No, sorry, wasn't Allardyce. Tell a lie. That was under Bilic. We all loved some of the football that we played under Bilic, especially having Pyatt there, etc. But we had a soft underbelly. And that seems to be what people are suggesting. I'll be quite happy for nice football, great football. But yeah, we'll lose and we might not do much and we may not get into Europe, but it'd be attractive to watch. I'm being facetious, but what is it that we actually want? What is it that we actually aspire to? Is it just entertainment and sod the results? Or is it grinding out the results and achieving, making Europe, cup competitions and all that sort of stuff? There is a balance. I know that there is. I know what you're going to throw at me. Look at Emery at Villa and stuff like that. Look at Postecoglou at Spurs, etc., etc. But at this moment in time, those two teams under those two managers have yet to get anywhere to win anything. All right, it's their first season. No, actually, Emery was there last season, wasn't he? So let's see what happens with both those teams at the end of this season. Will they win anything? Will they finish high enough to qualify for Europe next season and then win something? It'd be interesting to see. If Moyes, Paddy, if Moyes did start to the end of the season, that would. Oh yeah, you mentioned that already. Gary, how are you, mate? Thanks for your message on Facebook the other day. Given how fickle people are, if we were to get Carrick in, he had a bad run, fans will turn on him in a heartbeat. And they would, they absolutely would. Sean, happy seeing the Discord being frantic lately. 3 posts. Yeah. You know what? What's nice, I said earlier on, that here, at least we have differences of opinion, but we can accept others' opinions, which is nice. Let's scroll down. Let's try and catch up. How far behind am I? Fucking well behind. Anthony, get hold of X, see what he says. You could probably take as gospel. Well, X and Sean do talk to each other quite a lot, an awful lot, a hell of a lot. But I've had X on the show. I'd love to get him back as well if I can get him on a show. Andrew, that run of play still is probably down to the players saying, sod these tactics, that play, how we know how we can play. I can't, I'm not, I don't want to disagree with you, but I can't buy into that. I can't buy into players turning around and going, we don't give a shit about you, David Moyes. You know, we're just going to do our own thing. Because if Moyes, being the way he is, as stubborn as a lot of you say he is, and we know he is, if that happened, Moyes will go, you dropped. You're not playing. You didn't follow my instructions. You dropped. And also, why, as I said earlier on, why do it for the game against Spurs? You know, player revolution and you know, sort of etc., and not do it in the game against Fulham or any previous games where we've not played well. Why only one of those? That's why I don't buy into that theory. I don't buy into that player revolt theory. I don't, you know, because otherwise they'll be doing it game in, game out. Flemmer, the only game at Brighton I can say we played as a team. The rest was shit and pure luck on. Well, what about Arsenal? You know, to be quite honest with you, I think we played exceptionally well against Arsenal in the Cup recently. Let's scroll down. Hasten, good evening to you. Beating Spurs, that's what we like. I hope West Ham finish in Europe. I'm an Arsenal fan anyway. Welcome, Hassan. Hassan, not Hasten. Welcome, Hassan. Always nice to have a fan of another team come on board, give you views. Always welcome. And we have an affinity with who we don't like. Mark, I don't believe a word Sean said. I'm thinking slow day in the office. Yeah, maybe. David, asses of Woolwich out. It's okay. I'm happy to have our other fans come on here. You know, if they come on respectfully, we treat them with respect as well. Billy Bob, I wish one day you'd smash that button. But mind you, like I said last week, if you did, you won't have a laptop left. Juha, bought myself a bottle of Kraken for holidays. I'll have a drink. Thank you, mate. It's a beautiful. Guess what I had? I had our works Christmas do last week. And I got bought a drink. And I said, I'll have a Kraken. And I was asked, double? Yeah, of course it's going to be a double. And then when it was brought to me, I thought, hang on a minute, this ain't Kraken. And then I realized I just tried the ground coffee flavor Kraken. Boy, oh boy, it's very nice. Very nice. Billy Bob, good evening to you, mate. Well, late was at hospital. Oh, mate, I'm so sorry. I hope he's recovering well. Fingers crossed for you, mate. But thank you for joining as well. Andrew, Moyes will be here next season as long as we stay in the Premier League, which is all Sully cares about. I'm not so sure. I think Sully's seen the light, ironically. Oh, man. I would like a manager who understands the physicality of Premier League, its pace, and how quickly the midfield needs to be. I agree. Someone said it earlier on. We absolutely do need more pace in midfield. Daniela, Mr. Mace, that's the problem. Fans think just because they're spending big, they have a right to be entertained. But fact is, football is a sport at the end of the day, and it's about winning any way you can. That you know, it is true. James, good evening to you. Moyes definitely loves a bit of gaslighting, don't we all? But some gases are worth getting rid of, like methane, for example. James, how are you? You were at the game. Did they look for... Hi, still, you were at the game. Did they look fatigue or did they down tools? No, I think you looked at Bowen in the second half. You know, the look on his face was like, for fuck's sake, let's get in, try and get ourselves back into this game. They cared. There were players that were like, just didn't seem to have the energy to be able to move. I don't know which goal it was. I think it was Emerson who came on as a second half sub. Now, he suffered from this illness as well. He came down with a bug, which is why he didn't start the game. And Emerson didn't look like he was actually physically capable of being able to turn around and run with the player that picked up the ball. He just looked like he had no energy in him at all. And did they down tools? No. You know, you should have seen the look on some of their players, our players' faces. They look really like, what the fuck's happened? I'll tell you who's really disappointed me lately, and I don't know if he's got this virus as well, is a Gerd, Knife a Gerd. Like, you look at some of the challenges that he's going for. Now, I've been an advocate of a Gerd. I've been even saying that maybe him and Mavropanos could actually forge a decent partnership at the back. And I'm now beginning to ask myself, we might, if we need an overhaul, it looks like we're probably going to need an overhaul in defence. You know, I think Emerson's good. I think he's done a lot better than I thought he would as left back. I always considered him to be a wing back. I think Soufal tries, but we know we need a replacement for him. And I think our central defenders, Zuma, with his knees can't turn. Mavropanos is taking longer to bed in than I thought he would. Ogbonna, we love him. He's been a stalwart player for us, but we know his time's up. And then Agurd, I look at him and I think, mate, you're meant to be like like a one of the top, rated midfield defenders around that's being sought after. But I'm beginning to not see much in you to suggest that. Obsidian. But we have spent a fortune not to be the same old West Ham. Yeah, agreed. We gave up Upton Park not to be the same old West Ham. Same old West Ham isn't an excuse. Totally agree. We fell for the bullshit, and that's one thing that you got to pin on the owners. They did lead us down the country mile when they said top team, world class team, world class stadium, and all that. We all fell for it stupidly. 1K. After our loss, what do you think our background staff are saying, or do they keep quiet to keep their jobs? I don't know. Again, these were the rumours that were flying around last season, and Mark Warburton came out and he alluded to a number of things. I left because I wanted to stay friends with Moyes, etc. But we hear an awful lot of other stuff about Mark Warburton, that probably shouldn't be mentioned here. And so you do start to think, well, hang on a minute, how much of that is true? I think coaches do have a say. I think the final decision is David Moyes', without a shadow of a doubt. But I think the background staff do have a say. They must be scratching their heads. What is going on? I don't want to use it as an excuse, but it feels like this bug that's been going around has had more of an impact than we like to think. A lot of the reporters have been reporting it this week, talking about the bug spreading across the whole squad. Dan Hammer, good evening to you. Stella, I'd like to personally thank David Moyes for curing my insomnia during his tenure. David of Lazarus. How are you, mate? I haven't seen you for a while. Bring back the Hammerettes to tease the players' testicles. I'd play like Messi. How far are we? I'll tell you what, why don't we go into the final part of the show, which is this. So, for those of you who didn't manage to get to the early part of the show, I had Sean Whetstone on. His what do you call it? Handle on Twitter is West Ham Football. He's does more than just a podcast as well. And he was talking about David Moyes, some exclusives that he gave me earlier on. Excuse me 1 second. Sorry about that. I'm back. And he talked about three things in particular. He talked about, this comment that David Sullivan came out with earlier after the game on Sunday about these next two games are crucial. And many people have read into that, but that clearly means that if we lose the next two games, then David Moyes is gone. Sean said quite categorically, no, that's not the case. Even if we lose the next two games, Moyes isn't going anywhere. And then he talked about a potential investor, as we know, Vanessa Gold, who inherited some of the shares at West Ham through her late father, David Gold, is looking to sell 10% of her stake. And the name that's been bandied around is a New Yorker called Robert Bobby Kotick, which quite a few of you seem to be aware of. Not a very nice gentleman by the sounds of it. And then the third thing was apparently the name that's being bandied around from Canning Town Len, especially around all the ex-players, an awful lot of the ex-players, rumour going around that Michael Carrick is a potential as a replacement for David Moyes at the end of the season. Read into that what you want. Believe it, don't believe it. Let's see what happens. So let's talk about the two games in a little bit more depth, I guess. So first off, the match against Spurs on Thursday, apprehensive. We were in trepidation. We weren't sure what West Ham United was going to turn up. Were they going to turn up and get absolutely tonked or not? And if you look at the first half, the lineup, first of all, the first surprise was Areola. He's got a wrist injury, so he didn't make that. But the rest of the team, I guess, par for the course. Soufal, Zuma, Agurd, Emerson at the back, Alvarez, Ward-Prowse, Soucek in the middle, with Kudus, Paqueta, and Bowen more in attack-minded roles. So no surprises there. But in the first half, you could imagine. I mean, we were there. We were watching Spurs coming at us again and again and again. And I just talked about Agurd. Now, I don't know what's going on. I think we do zonal marking when it comes to set pieces and corners, and it doesn't work. We keep conceding goals from set pieces, and Thursday against Spurs was another example of that. Where who is it? Romero that scored, or whoever it was that scored. Just seemed to have really, he was challenged, but not very well challenged. And neither Agurd nor Zuma were commanding their. But I mean, James has asked, do we have a natural leader out on the pitch? And maybe Zuma's not the answer. And you just look at the defense and you just ask yourself, maybe he's right. Maybe, we don't have someone that's that commanding. Now I kind of get, and I know you're going to hate me me saying this, but now I kind of get why David Moyes wanted Maguire in the summer. I think he saw in him that natural sort of leader that can manage our defense, because we're not getting that at the moment. We're conceding far too many goals. And the first goal that was scored against us by Spurs was an example of that. It's almost like a free header. No one really went in to properly challenge the player in order to try and stop him from getting that header. And then the looping header, could Areola got to that? I don't know. But anyway, we thought we were going to get an absolute pasting from that point on. We were really apprehensive. We thought, there we go. By the time half-time comes, we're going to be 2-3 goals down. Didn't happen. We were still in the game at half-time. And our second half performance was absolutely superb. A fantastic response. Now, I don't care about these theories. Whatever the people want to believe, they believe. The players rebelled against Moyes, etc., etc. I don't buy into that. But we came out in the second half and we clearly meant business. The way that you could see the massive difference in our style of play. In the first half, we were so deep. The Spurs defenders were about a third of the way into our own half. That means we were all compressed. We were like fighting for our lives in terms of defending. The second half, we just took 10 steps forward. We went far further forward. When they had the ball, we were closing them down. We were pressing a lot quicker, a lot faster. And that resulted, but some people said, we were lucky. I've always said you create your own luck in a game of football. And we created our own luck by pressing them in order for them to make the mistakes. There's no doubt about it. The 2 goals came from errors from them, but we made them create those errors. Whereas you look at some of the goals that we've conceded this season, and they weren't enforced errors. We've just given the effing ball away. Bad passes like Mavropanos in the game against Crystal Palace, where he just back passed it blind. Didn't even see where he was looking, and it gave Crystal Palace the opportunity to score, and they took it. Whereas what we did against Spurs in the second half is we made them create errors, and that's where we got our goals, and it was fantastic to see. And because that first goal, Bowen's goal, a player whacked it. It was whacked, I think, by Kudus. It came off a defender, another defender. It was like pinball. It was like panic. There was no control over where that ball was going, and Bowen didn't even know it was at his feet at one point, and he scored a great goal with his right foot. And then the second goal, we pressed them again. That awful back pass put their goalie under pressure, where he could only sort of like fist it out straight into the path of James Ward-Prowse. So I think we fully deserved our win. We fully deserved it. I don't think we were lucky at all. I think it was fantastic the way we played. And then, of course, we go into Sunday, cock a hoop. We think, after that kind of performance, let's go again. And then you look at the lineup, 2 changes were made. Creswell came in and Fornals came in for Emerson and for Alvarez. Now, Alvarez was not even in the squad because he's got that illness again. If your player if you're lying about viruses and illnesses, then would you drop a player altogether? Alvarez was not well enough to even be on the bench. Sean said earlier, he turned up for training. He had to be taken home because he wasn't well. Emerson is also carrying the virus, so he started on the sub bench. So there's your reason why we made 2 changes. Were they the right changes? We've only got Cresswell, unfortunately. And would I put Fornals in? I'm not so sure. But for me, when you look at that subs bench, why didn't he start with Benrahma, who's been kind of like a main starter at the beginning of the season? I know he hasn't been playing that well lately, but when you needed someone out on the left, maybe Benrahma would have been a more obvious choice. Or Maxwell Cornet, who've been talking about time and time again. That lad didn't even get on as one of the 5 subs that David Moyes used. Both him and Kehrer. Oh, no, did Kehrer come on? I can't remember. But, Moyes made 5 subs in that game, and Cornet still cannot get a game. And it's weird. I don't know what's going on there. And people are saying Moyes has got his favourites, etc. And maybe Cornet, for one reason or another, just isn't... we hear that he will be sold. If it's possible to sell him in January, he'll be one of the few players that will be gone. But our performance was poor. I can't deny it was. I was there. I saw it for myself. Fulham carved us open, time and time again. But when you've got players who are carrying viruses, with Emerson on the bench, Alvarez missing, Paqueta apparently had a knock. Even Fornals was used, but even he apparently had a virus, which is why he was replaced at half-time. Cresswell was taken off because he just had an awful game. But whereas Fornals, didn't do much, but he weren't the worst player, but he had to come off because of the virus. So, look, excuses, I don't want to use them as excuses, but there's clearly something wrong. Since we've come back from international duty, there has been something wrong with the squad where, players are not being picked because, they're not in the squad because of their illnesses, etc., etc. Now, Moyes complained about team tiredness and fatigue. That bit I don't buy. If you're ill, you're ill. But tiredness and fatigue, well, David Moyes, that's what you got your squad for. The irony is, as I said a moment ago, David Moyes used all 5 of his subs. He never does that. He never does that, regardless of how badly we're playing or how well we're playing or whatever, or wanting to affect the way the game's going. He never does that. So there must be something in this thing about the squad having a virus that's spreading across the squad. Otherwise, when was the last time you ever saw David Moyes use all 5 subs in a game? It just doesn't happen. But the subs came on. It was all too little too late. We flattered the sea. We lost the game in the first half. It was evidence. Now, massive difference in the style of football, massive difference in our approach, massive difference in everything. You can't, I don't forgive Moyes for... The one thing about David Moyes is that I get upset about, and I think many people get upset about, is don't get us to this position and then blame it on fatigue, etc. David Moyes has got every opportunity throughout the season to be using his subs better. So instead of giving them 5 minutes at the end of a game, why not give them half an hour, 20 minutes? Get them to feel part of this team. Get them to feel part of what's happening at West Ham. Because then, when you do need them, they won't come on like strangers, and not do much. Utilize them properly. Other teams do that. And I think that's the biggest gripe I've got with David Moyes, in the way he uses the squad or not uses the squad to the best of his ability. Because if he was given throughout the season 15 minutes to Fornals, 10 minutes to Cornet, 15 minutes to Mbama, etc., etc., when it comes to games like this, he can turn around and say, okay, lads, half the squad are not well. You've done well for me. You've been playing. Now's your chance to demonstrate that you should be a regular fixture in the first 11. And I think that's the biggest disappointment. So do I believe there's a virus going around? Yes, I think you could see that. The players did look fatigued in terms of not so much tiredness, but certainly from they just didn't have a lot of energy in them. Is that downing tools? I don't think so. And I believe that there's a virus. But This is where the squad comes into play, David Moyes. Like I've just said, you give them 15 minutes, you give them 20 minutes, you give them half an hour in previous games. When you need them, they feel part of that unit. They then feel like they are there to represent West Ham and try and do their best. And I think that's the biggest difference between David Moyes and some other managers, where other managers will put players on to change the course of a game. Other managers will put players on to give players a rest. Other managers will put players on to actually demonstrate to them that they're part of this team. That's what David Moyes doesn't do. You know, we saw it 2 years ago where he flogged the team to death. You know, would you always use the same players, the same 11 players, and, you know, the special 2 or 3 subs that he would use in games. And he's kind of doing that again. He's keeping Carrick out. He's keeping Cornet out. He's keeping a number of players out of the team that, you know, if they were getting some game time, they might come on and do something different. Look at that. Look at that squad. Carrick not playing. Cornet not playing. Benrahma came on too late. Mabama, we all keep crying out for him. So there's the players there. You give the, and then the players that started. So you've got Fornals, Creswell, I think he's finished. So you've got Fornals, you've got Mavropanos, you've got Carrick, you've got Cornet, you've got Benrahma, you've got Mubama. There's 6 players there that if you give them a bit more regular game time, they might start demonstrating what they're capable of doing. But what will happen is when everyone is back, you know, you're going to see Creswell and Fornals go to the subs bench, and then quite likely the next game that will come up, they might get one of those players might get 5-10 minutes at the end of the game. It's not the way to do it, is it? But then, like I said earlier on as well, we don't see what's going on the training pitch. We don't see what effort these players are putting in for Moyes to make the decisions that he makes. He wants, and he challenged them, didn't he, last week? You know, I want these players, you know, these fringe players or whatever he called them, squad players, to show up. Well, Mabama came on against Forest and made a difference, and then didn't get picked for another couple of games. Cornet came on against TSC, made a difference by creating a goal, and now he doesn't get a sniff. So when players do come on and make a difference, then stick to them, show them some faith, and then say to them, well done, you know, you're in my thoughts for the next game. Even if you don't start, then maybe you'll come on at some point, but not the last 5 minutes. It doesn't make any difference coming on the last 5 minutes. Yeah, you could have a super sub who might score a goal, but that rarely happens these days. Right, Cockney. Alvarez needs to go back to being a centre-back. Zuma is way too slow. Why? Because we have too many centre midfielders when we need space for wingers. Bowen needs to go right wing again. I don't disagree with that. I think we do need a proper left-sided player, and we do have too many central midfielders. I agree. Excuse me. Anthony, when is the ladies' team manager getting sacked? We're bottom facing relegation. Spurs sacked her. They did indeed. She's not doing a good job at all. Lee, mate, how are you? I hope you're well. We've all had it's Monday, isn't it, mate? How great can Monday be? Brendan, I don't know where they are. They're clearly not chewing through that. Oh, fucking one of the cats caught and killed a mouse. The other half is dead, distraught. The mouse is dead. Well, you know, that's what cats do. Usual. Joey Barton should manage the ladies' team. David Granger. Seriously, she was used to it. Was season ticket holder Bobby Moore lower? Who is what? Who's a season ticket holder Bobby Moore lower? Not West Ham manager. Surely not. Is she? Andrew, agree, Daniela, but Lingard's form and goals got us into these European spots at the end of that season. He was good for us at the end of that season. Sean, no keeper in the world would have saved that Scarles penalty. I didn't see it, so be interested to have a look at it. Flamer, players out, in my opinion: Fabianski, Zuma, Souček, Paqueta, Fornals, Ward-Prowse, Creswell, Antonio, Cornet, or Deadwood. Oh, I don't know. Fabianski, yeah, agreed. Zuma, I am worried about him. Souček, I don't agree. I think he's come on form again. Paqueta, he'll probably go anyway. Fornals, I agree. Ward-Prowse, no, I don't agree. Creswell, yes. Antonio, yes. Cornet, I don't know. I haven't seen enough of him to turn around and say he's Deadwood. Dexter, good evening to you, mates. I agree with your Marco Silva. Very underrated coach who could do a good job for us, as I think we have a better squad of players than Fulham. Would you agree? Look, he's doing great at Fulham, isn't he? You know, he's got them there. He's got them. I think they're just behind us now in the league. So he's doing exceptionally well. What could he do with a bigger squad? More money. He could probably do very well indeed. Keith, entertainment is the whole point of every sport, leisure or hospitality activity. We pay money to be entertained. Anyone who thinks it's just a sport or a business is a shareholder, not a fan. You know, it's a cross between the two, isn't it? Because you're not going to be thanked for being entertaining but losing games. That's the big conundrum with sport these days, especially with so much money involved. You know, managers like Moyes thinks safety first. Right, wrong? Not good for us as fans. Mr. Steady Hands, good evening to you. Massive loss, Alvarez. Moyes will set up as per usual against Freiburg. But what would that be? You know, if all these players are out with illnesses, etc., it's going to be very interesting to see what lineup Moyes goes with. Andrew, a better manager, someone like Alonso, Emery, Lopetegui would get a tune out of our side. We have very good players who aren't being played to their full potential. A lot of people have been saying that for quite some time. How far behind am I? Very far behind. So I'm going to try and rush through these. Montana, what do you think of Agurd? He's stopped making mistakes, but we still look vulnerable when he is without Zuma. Signings like that make Moyes look so bad. See, this is the interesting thing. I think Agurd has lost something. I think both him and Zuma, when you're expecting them to be our... Does Ogbonna deserve to get a run in the team to create some stability? He's slow, but boy, oh boy, he can be effective. And should we be thinking about someone like Ogbonna? Or should we be thinking about what Moyes did in the second half in the game against Fulham? Was he went with three at the back. You may not have noticed it, but he went with it for a 5-3-2 formation. He had Kudus and Bowen kind of almost up front together. The trouble is they were playing too deep up front. You know, I wanted them to be right in the face of the keeper and the defenders. But he went with a 5-3-2. Should we, for a short while, go with a 5-3-2, get three central defenders in there? You're going to sacrifice a midfielder, but boy, oh boy, that might stop us conceding so many goals and might utilize Emerson in a different way. As a wing back, maybe Carrick could come back in to that role and play as a wing back. Is that the answer? We've kept one clean sheet in the Premier League all season, where we have a defensive-minded manager in place. Good evening, Fred. I hope you're well. Had the bug all last week. I hope you feel better now, mate. Paul, good evening to you. Montana, not only a good, but the whole defense is better when we attack more rather than inviting pressure for 90 minutes. No defense in the league would look good playing this way. I agree with that, and that is exactly what we did in the second half in the game against Spurs. We all moved forward 10 paces, and all of a sudden we looked like a completely different team. Freestyle video, I might show it to you. Is that how far behind I am? Scott, good evening to you. We have one of the best starts to a season ever, so I can't see Moyes going anywhere unless we lose a whole lot in a row. I agree. I mentioned that earlier on, and I totally agree. Montana, Stel, I do not agree with your theory. Moyes is stuck. He cannot take off Paqueta, Bowen, Kudus, Stel, or JWP. His favourite sub these days is Alvarez. He looks lost. I want to know, I was asked the question, if you had David Moyes in front of you, is why do you make subs so late? And why do you use the same players all the time? For me, if I was manager of a football team, I don't care what name that is. If you're not playing well, I would turn around to any of these players and say, I'm dropping you. The player at this moment in time that I would drop from those names, Paqueta, Bowen, Kudus, JWP, I would drop Paqueta because at the moment, he's not looking an £85 million player. Carpi, good evening to you. What is it, a binary choice? I take a 14th place finish and good football over 8th place Moyes ball. Each to their own. English Yardie, good evening to you. I hope you're well. It's clear to see that Moyes is a clueless manager. He doesn't even have a backup for Alvarez. Who does that? Oh, yeah, Moyes. Does Moyes have a depth chart by position? It's clear to see we only have one defensive midfielder. We do. And I've been saying that for quite some time. What happens if Alvarez is injured? I wasn't accounting for illnesses, but what happens then? Cockney, we need to be like top six fans and demand better. Demand to be top. We always think too small. Good point. James, that's true, Stel. We were always known as the Southern Softies and used to get nosebleeds north of Watford Gap. I enjoy winning most, to be honest. Daniela, Stel, we always had a soft underbelly, even the good old days of the 70s and the 80s. Rani, I think we take the grind out of results I think we take the grind. We grind out results at the likes of Spurs, but expect a bit of flair against teams like Palace, Everton, Sheffield United. The irony, though, Rani, is that those are the sorts of teams that make it harder for us to play. In a way, we can't play a flair game against these sort of teams because the way they're run, they're run like they're going to be sloggers, the way they're managed, etc. So ironically, I don't think we can play flair. I think we sometimes play flair football against the so-called bigger teams. Mr. Steady Hands, great channel and host. Thank you. Really much appreciated. And you're most welcome. Montana. If Villa win the league this season, Moyes will only have himself to blame for not being ambitious enough regardless of all these resources he has been afforded. Will they win the league? They're doing very well. Do forgive me. I'm trying to catch up. So I'm scrolling down. Kenneth, how are you? I haven't seen you for a while. I hope all is well with you, mate. And thank you good to see you. Epic. If Moyes knew that players were sick, why didn't he play the youngsters instead? Because he would have been absolutely annihilated if he did and we lost. And he would have been. I did ask myself the same question. If we had so many illnesses, then why not bring in a few players from the under-21s? But let's be really honest. All right, apart from the fact that we did get annihilated, imagine if he played some youngsters and we still got annihilated. No one would have thanked Moyes for it. James, still out, have you tried Black Cherry, Madagascar Vanilla? That's on my list now for Christmas, mate. Hammer it. I saw Bowen trying his hardest even at 5-0, and I thought that is pure respect to Moyes for keeping going like that. Either that or he was pricking it about going back to Daddy Dyer. Aaron, good evening to you, mate. I hope you're well. I'm very well. And I hope you are too. I've been Moyes in for a long time. Yesterday's result was unacceptable. Knowing us, we will win against Liverpool. What do we do? This is it. What do we do? It will not surprise me one bit if we go out and beat Liverpool on Wednesday. But we've got other games before that, haven't we? We've got Freiburg this Thursday. We've got Wolves next Sunday. And then we've got Liverpool. But I agree with you. We'll probably go out and beat them. I'm sure we are. Karthik, good evening to you. Let's leave that Fulham result behind us. Get going for Freiburg. Hopefully we'll get a win at home and top the table so that we get a few days off from European football. And it will save the fucking money as well because it ain't cheap, is it? Supporting West Ham abroad. Brendan. Aaron, what do we do? Anthony said, go into the next round happy, beating Liverpool. We will beat Liverpool. Oh, man. And put a couple of quid Stell's way for calling. Look, I hope you don't mind me saying it, but it was old man that gave me a very generous donation. I want to get the phone and stuff, but I know I need proper equipment and all that. I'll save up and get it. But I'm really, really grateful to you, mate. It was totally unexpected and really grateful for you for making that donation. Joel, how is West Ham and Michael Carrick being put in the same sentence? We have come so far from managers like him just to be back to square one. We can get a manager of the caliber as Unai Emery, Marco Silva. Look, it's a rumor, and it's a rumor that's being bandied around. We're not saying it's definitely happening, but you know what these rumors are like. Rani, baffling if the illness is really that bad. Can't be good on their bodies, having to keep trying to perform. And I think it was shown that it was a shit performance. Let's not deny it. But we've never been beaten like that in all the years, ironically, that Moyes has been in charge. Do correct me if I'm wrong. I think the only other team that beat us anything by 3, 4, 5 goals over the last few years has been Man City. Marco Silva blows brilliant for 6 months, then struggles. Interesting point. Let's try to catch up. How far behind am I? Not far. Joel, get rid of Paqueta too. His head is with Man City. Needs dropping because he hasn't been good enough and always throws a hizzy fit. I said this just a moment ago. I said this just a moment ago that, if I was going to drop any player at this moment in time, I would bench Paqueta. I actually would. Stel, it's only much appreciated. Thank you. If you're new to the channel, do hit that subscribe button. I'm very close to 5,000. Let's scroll down. Hammerette. We were lucky to be only 1-0 down against Spurs. Whole different ending had we have conceded more. However, we actually scored after half-time. Yeah, and we were good for it as well. Rani, Paqueta has looked tired for a few games now. He looks like he might be carrying a bit of knock. And it was said today he was carrying a knock, but we had to use him. So what do you do in that situation? Someone had just said, why not use the youth? And it would have been nice to see one or two of the youth players come in. But at the same time, what if we got a drubbing the way we did by having the youth? Moyes would have been crucified. Daniela, top flight football in Greece will be played behind closed doors for the next 2 months in an effort to clamp down on violence at sporting events. Just seen this. It is awful over there, apparently. Leon, good evening to you. Problem is still we are owned by a virus. Yeah. But that virus, ironically, does invest money in the club. Let's scroll down. Usual. Just seen in Turkey a football owner chilling the referee after the other team equalised the night. Is brilliant. Oh, no, it's not brilliant. I'm advocating violence. It's not brilliant at all. Funny, though. Let's scroll down. Richard, how are you, mate? The only defence for Moyes will be if those subs unused at the weekend start on Thursday. Good point. Let's see what's going to happen. If that virus is still there this coming Thursday against Freiburg, let's see what team Moyes puts out. Be interesting. Rani, not sure about that H8. I think we've seen his qualities, but also about some of the reasons why he hasn't played regularly. What did HH say? Mark, Dinos would play better if we pushed up a bit. Our backline is always under pressure, so mistakes happen. Yeah, I don't disagree with that. Montana, if we play him more often, we would have more own goals than most, in my opinion. 2 games, 2 own goals. I think you're talking about Mavropanos there. Steve, good evening to you, mate. I remember Lasagna Gate 2006 and 7 when we beat Spurs 2-1 to stop them getting in the Champions League. Happy days. First game I took my daughter to when she was 4, I think, and she didn't watch any of the game. Just tried to chat to the people behind her, and they were like, we're trying to watch the game, darling. And she couldn't give us a stop. But the only thing she liked about it was when the players came out and we were singing Bubbles. And then she had no interest after that. Delton, fundamentals of this team we don't have. Centre forward, assertive central midfielder, central defensive leader. That's assertive. Oh, yeah. And a positive manager. Peter, fellow supporters, you must remember that David Moyes is the most successful manager this team has ever had, which is true. Kubilai, good evening to you. We was tired, but still had his changes was wrong. We should be better on the pitch. Players fought, not Moyes. People wasn't complaining when won the European change. He made 5 changes. I think I would have liked to have seen. I can't remember if his name's gone. Carrick came on. I really genuinely can't remember, but I would have liked to have seen Cornet come on. To be honest with you. Mark, Agurda's had his head turned by the Saudi League, maybe. Good point. Quite possible. Paul, players were tired. Fulham smashed Forest 5-0 as well. They must have been knackered. Yeah, but we are meant to be better than Forest, aren't we? Andrew, milk turns faster than old Bonner. That's cruel. But he's been a good servant, but he's done at Premier League. He is, unfortunately. I agree with that. Rani, Cornet is a real mystery. He seemed to have so much potential. Just ain't seen him since the injury. It is strange. And I talked about the injury and I suggested that we were trying to use him sparingly because of that. But now I'm not so sure. There's something else going on there, which seems really, really odd. James, I thought we played really well at Villa this season. Our fans gave us no credit, though, because we lost. It wasn't our worst performance. Leon, definitely like Villa to win the Premier League. It would give other teams hope. Absolutely. Leicester City of a few years back. Hammer, I know if my aunt had balls, she'd be my uncle, but we've actually lost 12 points so far from winning positions. That puts us joint with Arsenal. Okay, good point. Let's scroll down. Montana. I love the Barclays this season. We're not the only inconsistent ones. Almost every team has received a stonking or a surprise result. That's why we have the best league. Cannot get this anywhere else. That's a really good point. Delton, I still haven't changed my sex just yet, so it's still, but I get you. I think you're wrong in saying. I think you're wrong saying Moyes would have been annihilated if you used the youngsters. It was explained before the game. West Ham fans would support them. I would. I think what will happen is, do you remember the days when Sam Allardyce was at West Ham and he used, it was a cup game and he put the youngsters on and we got tonked. I think we lost something like 5-1 or 5-0 or something like that. And people absolutely slated Allardyce for putting the youngsters in that position. And I think, quite honestly, I don't disagree, Delton. I think there will be fans that would have turned around and gone, well done, David Moyes, for giving the youngsters an opportunity. Had we got tonked 5-0 with youngsters in the team, I guarantee you there'll be a section of the fan base that would have gone, how dare David Moyes do that to those youngsters, putting them in that position, getting tonked like that in the Premier League. What's he thinking of? I'm glad you would support them, and I would to a point, but I guarantee you there would have been sections of the fan base that would have ripped him a new one if he'd done that. Jack, just subscribe and like your video. Thank you, mate. Really much appreciated. And welcome to the West Ham Voice family. Let's scroll down. Still, most importantly, who's going to win strictly? It's going to be that girl. What's her name? That girl that's with the mad Italian. That's who will win it. People, watch Strictly. You want to cheer yourself up on a Saturday night after a shit performance by West Ham? Go and watch Strictly. There you go. Jay, good evening to you. You lose Moyes and you free fall. I think he gets the best out of an average squad. You see, people have different thoughts on David Moyes. The irony, whenever I talk to fans of other teams and I go, the fan base just don't like Moyes. There's a lot of them that don't like. They go, what are you talking about? They don't see what our fan base sees, Wolf, we need to respect Moyes for what he's done. Yeah, agreed. Sean, that tonking was Forest away in the FA Cup. Yeah, puts it into perspective. I'm screwing with you guys, by the way. Please get him out. Brendan, that was Forest in the Cup. I think the supporters were upset that the FA Cup was thrown away. Rani, it was Forest in the FA Cup. That's right. But still, he didn't get plaudits for using the youngsters, did he, in that cup game? Rani, interestingly, Villa aside, all the teams in Europe competition struggled this weekend. Good point. David, Sam did it deliberately to shut up those he needed to put in a couple. Jack, I haven't. I'm going Thursday knowing we're going to sit back again. If we sit back on Thursday against Freiburg, we'll get beat. We will get beat. And I'm down to the bottom. You thought I'd been hacked there. Oh, you're talking to Wolf. Wolf, wish I wasn't late for the show. You can always watch it back again, mate. That's it. I'm done. Always do 2 hours. I feel like I'm cheating you when I don't do 2 hours, even though my voice is going. One more comment. Delton. It was different with Allergic. It was different with Allergic because he wanted to rest players. Oh, with Allardyce, because he wanted to rest players for the City game. We're talking about replacing sick players. Iron Ore, good evening to you. I don't think the squad is average. They're struggling for motivation. Going to be interesting. Let's see what happens. What day are we? When Monday? We've got Freiburg coming up on Thursday. I'm going to do a show probably tomorrow to talk about Freiburg. So do look out for that. I'll talk about Freiburg, how they're doing at the moment, etc., their past few games. They've been tonking teams 5-0 as well. No, you don't want more Hammer. I'm knackered. So do look out for that. Obviously, I'll be at the game. So, when we score all our goals, I'll be putting up, little 1 minute videos on the channel as well. So look out for those. Getting closer to doing a Friday night, but don't expect too much. Anyway, thank you all for your comments. Thank you all to those who have subscribed tonight. Really, really appreciate it. Much appreciated. Have a great week, everyone. Freiburg, Thursday. Easy, innit? Anyway, that's another story. Have a great week. See you all soon. And, don't fret. It's only football.